So after getting our final shape, we can start adding some of the details of our avocado. And of course, before we do that, we also want to extract a little bit of our we want to extract the elements that we'll make into the seed. So in this case, we're going to grab the entire loop. So again, the same way you can double click an edge to select an entire loop, you can also do that with faces. So if you just click one face and double click it, nothing will happen. So you need to click the first face and then the second face, and then Rhino will try to understand where it loops all the way around. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm just going to Alt and extract it. So now we have this kind of shape like this, which I can Control Shift select and cap. Actually, it's not capping. It's not capping, but I can select the entire face right here and fill. So one of these is this fill, and it fills out. Same with this, fills out. And then I can select here, Control Shift F to crease, and this right here, Control Shift F to crease. And I don't know why it's not creasing here, even though it should be equal. Well, this one didn't copy the similarity, so we're gonna get rid of it, and we're gonna add it again. If we go on top view, we go on our reflection plane, Alt to select the vertex, Shift to make sure it snaps, and now we have our seed. Again, we want to crease these. So with crease again, it's Control Shift F. That's how we crease based on the shortcuts. So make sure you get the shortcuts right. And now we have this kind of outline or draft seed that we can then work on later. For now, we're just going to leave it just so we don't have to graph from the complex shape. So we can Shift select it, Control Shift C. Actually, it's not resetting it. So click on the gumball, reset gumball, and Shift drag this arrow so you can scale it down on 3 dimensions. And then maybe just place it for now somewhere around here. Kind of just drop it, just how avocados work, right? And for now, we're going to Control Shift click it and then just hide it, because we're not going to work on it. And we're going to start focusing a little bit more on the details of our avocado. So one of the first things that we can start adding is just more edge loops, of course. You can just Control Shift E and add more and more and more edge loops. And that just gives you a lot more power onto how to add more detail and make it look more cool. But before we do that, I'm going to add some of these edge loops in order to have a little bit more control. So I'm going to add one here. As you can see, the shape changes a lot. And I think I'm just going to add one there actually. And now I'm going to fix a little bit of how this area is, just because it's a little too sharp. I'm going to drop it down a little bit here. And for example here, I'm missing an entire edge loop that I think that I should be having. Control Shift E, move it up here, and now we can start editing it somewhere here. So that makes a lot more sense. You can always hit tab to see again the shape that you've created. And that way you have more control over what you're doing. But you always want to look into the polygonal shape, because that gives you the ability to see what you're doing. So instead of actually moving point by point, I'm going to actually double click the entire thing and start just working with that face. And maybe flatten it out a little bit. Maybe rotate it a little bit so it matches the shape a little better. And then I can start editing it some of these areas so it kind of matches better. So you always want to, if you can always kind of click things in a group instead of one by one, it just makes it better. So here I'm going to edit a little bit of it, but for now, let's keep it in a way where we just edit things in a macro way, where we only edit elements as a group. So now, for example, this, we can do it manually, but now we can start editing things as a group. So for example, here, this face, I'm going to start doing a little bit of this. And as you can see, I don't like how this is like this. I'm going to move the gumball up and start extruding this down so it matches a little better. We look at our avocado a little bit. It's looking interesting. And, you know, we want to just narrow down more of a defined shape. So here, right here, I don't like how this is so messed up. So I'm going to click on this, the scale 1D, just click on it and click 0. So that way it just straightens it out. I'm going to check this one too. From the top, it's also not straight. Here, I'm going to click on the red one, 0, straighten it out. Maybe I can also rotate it a little bit, right? So that's just a cleaner model. We just want to have clean models. So now that we have this kind of more of a clean model, maybe this part's not so clean. I think this part just needs this a little lower. So I'm going to lower this manually, right? So now we have this sort of cleaner, kind of more detailed model. We can add even more detail. So for example, one of the things that I did on this model is I added these loops that kind of looped within itself. So as you can see, let's see it from here actually. Yeah. So as you can see, the loop is happening, but then it's looping within itself and coming back. So it's a nice detail that I added on this one, and we can try to add on our new avocado too. Let's try to hide it. And so let's try to get to that. So we're going to start adding a lot of detail here on these. So we're going to start doing Control-Shift-E. And then on this one, Control-Shift-E. And after we get this shape, we can select the entire face, and we can do the, it's called the inset sub D edges. And the good thing about the inset sub D edges is that you have more control over the distance in which it's, in which it is insetting itself. So you can do it as a group, you can do it as a single element. We want to keep it as a group, and we want to do somewhere around 0.5. It's just a number, so it doesn't really matter. As you can see, it kind of messed up. Did it? It did, but it's working still, just because our other side, it's being mirrored. So actually, let's select these. Let's actually move these away, because actually let's put it in a different layer, and let's just hide it. That way we don't see it ever again. But it's still there for anything. So now you can see that this has a lot more detail, and it's a little more clean. And now we can start maneuvering things a lot better here. Now before we make this ins loop, let's actually inlet it a little one more time. So inset 0.5. Actually, it didn't happen. Let's do 1. So now we have this loop, this very interesting loop, and we have this other loop right here, which is going to give us a lot of power into the way we model. So what we can start doing is like just start making this loop, and let's grab this and like kind of make it go inside of it. So now you're getting this kind of really interesting insetting, but that was a little too much. Just do it a little bit. So if we go in render view and then away from render view, you can always see a little bit of how that looks. One of the things that I'm realizing here is that this is a little bit too much. I'm going to move my gumball all the way up here, and I'm going to rotate it a little bit. So you see at the bottom, it's away from my thing. And now I'm going to inlet it like this. So now if I control it like this, now you're going to see that it's a much nicer form in the way it's behaving. But then there's a problem here in which it's doing that. So let's just Control Z, and let's leave that for later. Let's move this one a little forward, and let's move this one also a little forward. So now we have these. So now in order to make it kind of loop within itself the way the other one was doing, we need to add an extra edge loop here. Control-Shift-E, sorry. Control-Shift-E, and we're going to add this new loop. But we don't want it to kind of change our shape. So Well, first off, let's fix this. Let's rotate it and let's make sure it's the 0. So it's kind of a nicer form. And so what we can do in order to add another edge loop, we're just going to have to add it. And then we can edit it in a way that doesn't affect the shape of our avocado. Actually, before we do that, if we do proportional, if you do proportional, it'll maintain the shape a lot better instead of absolute. And then you get to kind of edit it a little bit. Let's see from the front. You can edit it a little bit in a way where now we're getting this shape and we can make this into 0. And so now we kind of just adjust it so we don't lose our shape. Although I think we're losing it a little too much. Maybe there's a way in which we can create this edge loop without losing our shape. So let's look through the tools a little bit. Extrude wouldn't work. Maybe if we inlet these faces, inset these faces, and just do like somewhere at 5. We're actually straining it out a lot more, so we don't want that. So we're going to need to just do that, make it proportional. We can also make it both sides, but let's keep it to one side, and let's just bring it closer to the end. So we just need to adjust this in order to bring back the shape that we had. Let's adjust this and let's snap all these vertices to this edge. So now that way we maintain our shape right here. Although it's not perfect, but we'll maintain it. And so now we can start kind of taking these, increasing them, and then starting to loop them within themselves, which is what we're going to do next. We're going to do that with this one. We're going to do this with this one. We're going to crease them. But before to crease them, we're going to deselect these two. We're going to select this one, and we're going to crease all these together. As you can see, it's doing what we were planning, but it's kind of just, it's not really flowing the way we want it. So let's just start editing things out until you start seeing a little bit more of the shape that you're looking for. So now this looks a lot nicer. And there's a little problem in the way this is doing. This is flowing like this. So let's just add more edge loops here. So that way we can edit it out a little bit better. Okay. So we'll fix that part later. But let's continue adding more of these faces, right? More of these kind of loops, special loops that we've created. So we're going to add another one here in the back. Before we do that, let's actually get rid of these edge loops just because they're going to complicate things more. But before we do that, we add these in the back. We're going to need insets, right? Insets of different things. So we're going to do, again, we're going to do inset, which is here, insets of the edges. We can always add this into a shortcut. I haven't done it. I'm not sure why, but it's always probably good to add that into a shortcut. And then we're going to take the second face and inset it again, but let's do it to 3. So it's not that much. So as you can see, now you have these elements. So now we're going to take this entire loop, deselect these two in the middle, right? Select these and Control-Shift-F to crease them. So now as you can see, you're getting this element again. So we're just going to grab them all, deselect these two, of course, and then just kind of bring this up a little bit because we don't want this to come down so much, and bring this up. So now we're getting this double shape right here. Interesting shape of our avocado. If we look at it a little bit up here, we can move these manually. So you start getting these interesting shapes, interesting lips and stuff like that. You can always get those manually. And we can maybe also reduce the size of this and kind of just adapt it a little better to the form. So that's when we can start getting into the details of every point. You always want to go back with tab so you can see that there's nothing kind of intersecting within itself. It's very important to avoid that, of course. And now let's kind of give them an idea to kind of connect these together, kind of instead of having them end like this, they can connect. But maybe let's leave it like that here, and let's do that here, so we can actually do the same thing for this face and this face. So let's grab this face, and again, we're just gonna inset more edges. Let's do it at 2, and we're gonna do it again, and this time at 1. So now we have all these faces. Actually, kind of messed up there. Let's do it again. There you go. So now we have all these faces all together. So we're gonna grab all these, or the edges again, all these edges, deselect these last 2, and we're gonna crease these. And we're gonna crease it with this one too. And now we're gonna grab these, we're gonna protrude it a little forward, just a little bit, so you can start seeing it. And we're gonna find a way to connect this to this one, right? So maybe actually we're gonna increase this one. We're gonna increase this one, and we're gonna do the same with this edge. Again, inset. Let's do it at 1. It's fine. Inset again, and let's make sure it's not messing up. And now, as you can see, these are creasing. So you can crease all these together. Let's actually crease these first. Deselect the last 2. Take these. Deselect the last 2. Control Shift F. We're also going to crease this one, F. And we're going to uncrease this one. Control Shift D. And we're going to connect these as a crease together. So you can see, if you look at the thicker line, you see where these are being creased. You see, we'll fix how they flow later. So you see how these are creasing. Boom, boom, boom. Control Shift F. And now we have this nice, whoa, what happened here? It's kind of nice because we can fix that. But it's actually looking a lot more interesting now. So you can see this is a clean modeling technique. I'm not sure why they're creasing like this within each other. And I think it's because these right here need another insetted kind of area that kind of curves within itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab these faces. We're going to grab these. We're going to grab these. We're going to grab these. And we're going to deselect these 3. These 3 kind of sections. And now we're going to inset it only in these faces. So we're going to click inset again at 1. And now what we'll be doing is we're going to start kind of moving this away from this. We're going to kind of make it smaller and kind of just adjust it to that form, right? It's not really helping. So we're going to kind of manually adjust it. If it doesn't work, sometimes you just have to try things, and if they don't work, you need to go back. This is not really working. Unless this right here. You do something like this. Now we start getting this interesting kind of spaceship avocado, which is pretty cool, right? So we can get this part, we can get this part, deselect this, select this, and kind of crease this, then maybe extrude it out. So now we're just, at this point, we're just editing things to make it look cool. And then we can start fixing a little bit of how this actually works. So one of the problems I see here with some of these faces. I mean, it starts getting messy, of course. It starts getting messy just because you want to avoid this. You want to avoid making things messy. But sometimes you just need to deal with it. And in this case, it's not looking so bad. It's looking interesting. And we're getting a very interesting shape. So I'm happy with it. Again, this is all about subjective kind of representation of what you like. This is strange because we lost our connection here. So we're just going to add it. Control-Shift-A. And we're going to hold Alt to snap. Hold Alt. Hold Alt. And hold Alt. And now we kind of fixed that part which was broken. I'm not sure why. Sometimes it just happens. This area we're going to kind of also bring it up so it makes more sense. And our entire avocado is looking very, very cool. Maybe this part we can bring it down so it makes, there you go. That's why it was not really looking good. It was kind of looking strange. So we can just move things around, play with them until you get the look that you're looking for. So that looks pretty cool. And I'm really happy with it. So I think we've found a really nice avocado. Maybe we can start. So this is actually really nice. We can maybe just add a little bit more detail into the face right here. We can inset it and then maybe just pull this forward and then maybe just extrude this, Control Alt E, so you can extrude it in a little bit. And then we have this kind of nicer, more interesting looking avocado shape. Could bring this one up, move it out like that, make it more pointy maybe. So we just bring it up like this, you know, and let's just do that here too. Inset it in this weird way. So let's just set it like this. There you go. And then let's reduce the size. It's doing it strange just because you have to grab the whole face. And then Control Alt E, extrude it in. Now we have this nice kind of shaped seed. And so here you go. Now we can get rid of our reflected element. You just right click into your reflected tool, click on your two elements and right click and boom. Now it's gone. And we have this final really cool shaped and form of an avocado. It's no longer an avocado, it looks more like a spaceship. But if we compare with its counterpart, then it's kind of huge. Let's actually select both. Make this one a little bigger. And rotate it so they match. If you kind of compare these two together, actually, okay, there's a couple things that I can fix later on, like this edges and things like that. But if you compare these two, you will see that this was made a little bit more into the detail, and I took a lot more time moving individual points, which was not very smart. But then here you can see we were working in a more general way where we were using edge loops instead of different things, and it just naturally looks cleaner. I mean, in my opinion, it just naturally looks cleaner. So you can see this has a lot of, I mean, you might like this more, but I feel like this one is a lot more cleaner and it was a lot more easier to make. So it's really important that you maintain the general workflow of moving things in a more general way rather than a singular kind of point and edge, etc. And that's why Sub D, it's so useful. So in the next video, we will go over a little bit of exporting these files, going into Blender and just making a really nice texture and making a really nice render view and make it cool so we can start posting it on Instagram and start showcasing our modeling skills.